So before you even watch this guide, I recommend you watch the first two episodes first, the rocket punch cancel and the turn punches. I will link both of those in the description. I really recommend you watch those because I am going to be using both of those techs in this video, and I teach you pretty much everything about those two techs in those two videos. So recommend you watch those two first before you get into this one. But yeah, let's get started. This is called a bounce. So a bounce is pretty easy to do, but it can get a little complicated when you start to get more advanced with it. So in short, all you have to do is do a rocket punch cancel. I explained that earlier in the series. All you do is charge your punch, and then press your jump button to cancel your punch. Now, how do we get the bounce? So getting the bounce is easy, but understanding how it works and maximizing your height and being able to bounce off of anything is the hard part, and I will be explaining all of that stuff later part in this video. But I just want to show you the bouncing part, and I don't want you to practice this spot just yet because your ping is going to play a role in when you're supposed to press your jump button, and I'll also show you that just a little later, but just don't practice the spot just yet, okay? So basically, you're going to stand in the middle, right? And you're going to look at the middle of the rock, and you're going to just punch at it, and then press your jump button at the right time, and I'll show you what the right time is right after this bounce. See, I got a bounce, I punched at it, I canceled my punch with my jump button, and I got a bounce. I will now show you how the timing stuff works. So now I'm going to show you when you're supposed to press your jump button, and then I'm going to be showing you how your ping plays a role in this. So when Doom punches, you're obviously punching in a straight line, and we're going to be bouncing off of this middle part of the rock, and this is our opening. So this whole thing, this whole distance right here, is when we can press our jump button, right? So we can press our jump button here, we can press our jump button here, we can press it here, we can press it here, and no matter what, we are always going to get a bounce. But if I were to press my jump button in this area, I will get the maximum bounce height, okay? And if I were to press my jump button in this area, I will get a decent bounce height. I won't go as high, right? If compared to like me pressing my jump button here, I wouldn't go as high, but I will still get a decent bounce height. And if I were to press my jump button in this area right here, this bottom part, I will get a very low bounce, but I'll still bounce, I just won't go as high. And if I were to press my jump button anywhere here, I'm not going to get a bounce at all. And if I were to press my jump button right here, I'm not going to bounce at all because I'm going to be punching the rock at this point. So the opening of you getting a bounce is pretty fair. Obviously, the later you press your jump button, the higher you'll go, right? Which is right here. This is the later part. But you run the risk of punching the object if you're trying to go for the maximum bounce height. So usually you want to kind of aim between the middle and between like going as late as possible. So maybe in this area. And pressing your jump button too early, you're not going to really get that good bounce height. So I tend to not do that. I try to press my jump button around this area because you get a very good bounce height if you can time it as late as possible. Obviously, if you have a higher ping, this timing is going to be different, but it's still the same concept, so I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so I'm going to be showing you in drawing how ping plays a big role when it comes to bouncing off of things, because if you have higher ping, the timing is different, but it still works the same. So I just want to explain what this eye thing is. So basically, if I were to punch down the stairs right here, it doesn't even matter if it's downstairs, I can punch down here, right? If I press my jump button right here, this green line, I will get the maximum bounce height. If I were to press it in the middle, I will get a decent bounce height. And if I were to press it at the red part, I will get a low bounce, right? So, and if I were to press it anything below this red line, right, of my jump button, I would press it anywhere here, I'm not going to get a bounce at all. And if I were to press my jump button around here, it's not going to work because at this point I'm going to be punching the rock and I'm not going to go anywhere. So if you have low ping, so for example 0 to 40 ping, usually you want to press your jump button in this area, right? Don't take this as the exact ping, exact spot, right? You just want to test this out on your own and figure out where this eye thing is going to be placed for you, because it's going to be different for everybody's ping, right? It's going to be different for everyone. So, for example, let's say you have 60 to 80 ping, right? If you were to try to press your jump buttons right here at this ping, you're not going to get a bounce at all, because at this point, if you were to press your jump button anywhere here, you're actually going to punch the rock because of you having higher ping. So what you do to adjust for that is you press your jump button earlier than usual, which is around here. And when you press your jump button right here, right, and you let go of your punch and you press your jump button right here, you're going to get the maximum bounce height that's possible. And if you were to press it right here, you're going to get the lowest bounce as possible. And if you were to press it right in the middle, you're going to get a decent bounce. And that's only if you're at this ping, right? Now, let's say you're at even a higher ping. So now, you're going to actually have to drop this little eye thing, even lower. So for example, if I were to actually let go of my punch. Let's say I'm at 100, or let's say I'm at 150 ping, right? Just for an example. And I let go of my punch, and I press my jump button anywhere here. I'm not going to bounce at all, because at this point, I'm going to be punching the rock. And so what I need to do is I need to press my jump button earlier than usual. So I'm going to have to press my jump button here to get the maximum bounce height. If I want a decent bounce height, I press it in the middle. And the same thing with the red part. If I want a low bounce, I press it at the red part. And anything below red, I'm not going to bounce at all. So ping plays a big role when it comes to bouncing off of things. So everybody's ping is different, right? So you're gonna have to move this little eye thing somewhere, right? You're gonna have to just move it somewhere, and you're gonna need to figure it out. Like for me personally, I play at low ping, so I tend to press my jump buttons around this area, which works best for me. And then sometimes when I get like a West Coast game, I'm usually like 70, 80 ping. I kind of lower this just a little bit, maybe like around here, and then I can get my bounce consistently. So I have to memorize two different timings, because if I'm playing in like an East Coast server, my timing is around here, and if I'm in West Coast, it's down here, right? So I have to adjust my timing. Now, if your ping is inconsistent, this bar is going to be inconsistent, right? If you're getting like 20 ping, and then all of a sudden you're at 60 ping, you're going to have to adjust your ping, you have to adjust your timing, and then let's say you go from 60 ping to 80 ping, you're going to have to adjust your timing again, and you're going to have to keep adjusting it over and over and over, and you can't memorize the exact timing because of the inconsistent ping. So having consistent ping is very good for Doom, and it gives you a better way to basically memorize when you're supposed to be pressing your jump button based on visuals and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's just how it works when it comes to ping. You want to figure out when you're supposed to be pressing your jump button. You want to figure out on your own what part gives you the maximum bounce height, what part gives you a decent bounce height, and what gives you a low bounce height, and what part doesn't give you a bounce at all, and what part makes you punch the wall. And then you can kind of figure out where this little eye thing belongs for you, because it's going to be different for every single person, but the concept is the same. If you press your jump on as late as possible, you get the maximum bounce height, all that fun stuff. So try to figure it out, practice on this map, try to bounce off of this rock, and figure out what timing works for you. Okay, so now we're going to get a little more complicated with bouncing. I'm going to be teaching you how to bounce off of objects that are too high. So if you already mastered this object right here, and you understand how it works, and you understand how to figure out your jump timing, then you're good to go. We're going to go a little more advanced. Now, if we come to this object and we try to bounce off of this, because you can bounce off of any edge. I'll get to bouncing off of anything at the end of this video, right? I'll explain how you can bounce off of pretty much anything in the game. But if we want to bounce off of this right here, right, it's just too high. It's not going to work. So the way we fix this issue is we're going to jump first, and then we're going to we're going to charge our punch. We're going to jump first, and then we're going to let go of our punch at the right time, which is going to make us punch towards the object, and then we're going to press our jump button, which cancels our punch, and that's going to get us our bounce. So if you already understand your jump timing when you cancel your punch, if you understand this timing, then you're pretty much halfway there. You just need to learn the new timing of when to let go of your punch after you jump in the air. Alright, so I'm going to do a short explanation on how to bounce off of higher objects, and then I'm going to get a little more advanced with it. So in short, what you want to do is you want to jump in the air, right? You want to let go of your punch at the right time to be able to bounce off of this edge, right? So we jump in the air. This orange line is me jumping in the air, right? And then this orange line is me letting go of my rocket punch. So I'm punching in the air right now. And then I press my jump button at the right time, which cancels my punch. And then I hit the edge of this object, right? Because you always want to hit the edge when you try to bounce off of something. And then you go up in the air, you get your bounce. Pretty easy to understand. So now I'm going to show you what poor timing looks like. So if I were to jump in the air and let go of my punch at the top of my jump, right? So I'll hit the top of my jump, and then I let go of my punch, and then I press my jump button to cancel my punch, I will end up on top of the platform. I will jump over this edge, right? I will jump over this, and I'm not going to hit the edge, so therefore I'm not going to get the bounce. So that means I let go of my punch at the wrong spot, at the wrong height, at the wrong time, right? So what you could do is you want to lower this, right? So next time when I jump in the air, I want to let go of my punch here. So here, let me show you an example. Let's say I want to let go of my punch here. So I jumped in the air, I let go of my punch, and then I press my jump button, and then I hit the wall. Okay, so now I need to let go of my punch at a point where I'm higher in the air because I let go of my punch too low, right? This was just way too low. I need to let go of my punch at a higher spot. So I need to find that sweet spot where I could jump in the air, let go of my punch, and then when I cancel my punch, I will hit the edge and get the bounce. So that's how you figure out your timing and knowing if you have issues with your timing. You can also do it like, because when you jump in the air as Doomfist, or any character in the game, right? You jump in the air, and then you slowly fall down, right? That's just how it works. So you can either decide to jump in the air, let go of your punch, or you can jump in the air, wait till you drop down, and then let go of your punch, and then cancel your punch to get the bounce, right? It doesn't really matter as long as you let go of your punch at the right spot or at the right height, then it doesn't really matter, right? You could do it as you're going up in the air or as you're going down. It really does not matter. I personally like to do it as I'm going up in the air because it's just quicker to do than waiting for you to drop down and then go for the bounce, right? So that's how you figure out your timing issues when it comes to bouncing off of higher objects, but you can also come across some more issues, which I'll show you in a second. The timing of this is very complicated because Doom's punch doesn't go straight. So for example, if I told you to stand back here, jump in the air, let go of your punch, right? You let go of your punch, and then you press your jump button to cancel your punch, and then you bounce off of it, right? It's not going to work like that because Doom's punch doesn't go straight. It actually slowly falls down no matter what. It doesn't matter if you jumped in the air. It doesn't matter if you're falling off the high ground. You'll always punch down just a very little bit. You can go test that out to see how low you go when you punch. So that means if I were to try to go all the way back here, and I jump in the air and I let go of my punch at the top of my jump, I'm slowly falling down, right? I'm punching down, even though it's very little, and then you press your jump button to cancel your punch, and then you hit the wall and you go nowhere. That's just how it is, right? So the timing is going to be different every single time. Doesn't matter if you stand here, 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 here. Like, it's always going to be different. So that's the issue when it comes to bouncing off of objects that are higher than you. You need to understand that Doom's punch slowly falls down no matter what. So that's what's going to affect your timing when it comes to bouncing off of this edge. So what I would recommend is you stand maybe around this area and get an understanding of how to bounce off of higher objects, so you understand like when to let go of your punch. So if you want to test yourself, go ahead and come back here. Stand like maybe like right here, jump in the air, let go of your punch, and then press your jump button at the right time and try to hit the edge. You always want to try to hit the edge. And then once you understand how to do that every time, try to push yourself a little further back, maybe like all the way back here actually, and watch when you let go of your punch at the exact same spot, it's not going to work because you're going to drop down and you're going to hit the wall. So now you have to start letting go of your punch at the top of your jump instead of maybe just a little lower than the top of your jump. So that's the issue when it comes to bouncing off of higher objects. You just have to understand that Doom's punch slowly goes down. So the way I want you to practice on this object right here is I first want you to stand maybe like around this area and just try to get a bounce off of this, right? Just try to do this every time. Just keep doing it over and over until you can do it like 3 times in a row, right? Just keep practicing it, right? I got it 3 times right there. Now I want you to start changing it up. Try going on top of this rock and jump off the rock and then try to bounce off of it again. And you're gonna see the timing is very different now. Whoa, my mouse just tweaked out right there. But the timing is gonna be very different right now. So you wanna start practicing this now. You see, I'm not even getting it. So you just wanna keep practicing it. There we go, I got it. Let's try again. I got it there, but not as high, so I need to practice my timing a little bit better and letting go of my punch at the right time. You can see I'm still not getting it there. And like once you get this down, try standing on this right here and then jump to the side and then try it again. And you can see the timing is just completely different. So this is just something you have to practice. It's just gonna take time to learn and master because every object is gonna be different. Every height is different because like if for example, look, when I stand on here, look, I'm actually going up and down just a little bit. Just this much of a difference will change the timing of you letting go of your punch. Just keep practicing it. It's gonna take time to learn, and hopefully you can get better at jumping off higher objects. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys the trick on bouncing off of objects that are too high and that are from a far distance between you and the object. So let me show you what I mean. So this object right here, this obviously is way too high. See, if I try to bounce off of it, it's not going to work because it's too high. So what do we do when it's too high? We have to jump first, right? So we're going to jump first and then we bounce off of it, right? So we already know that. Now, if I'm at a far distance and I want to bounce off of this high object, it's not going to work because, as I said earlier, when you punch, your punch slowly goes down. So by the time I even get to this object, I'm already on the floor. So let me show you what I mean. You see that? I can't bounce off of it. It's just way too high. And my punch is slowly going down, and by the time I even get to this point and I press my jump button, I'm already touching the ground by the time I get to close to this object, right? So there's a trick. Basically, instead of pressing your jump button as late as possible, you actually want to press it early. So let me show you. I'm going to put this in slow-mo to show you what I mean. Hopefully I can time it well. You won't go as high, right? Like, you won't get like the best bounce ever, but you'll still get a bounce enough to the point you can get an indicator slam, which is usually what you want. So hopefully I don't mess it up here, but yeah, let me show you. So we're going to jump first, and we're going to cancel our punch early. You see that? You saw what I just did? I canceled my punch early, and I'm able to hit the edge just a little bit and get a bounce. Let's do it again. You see that? I'm able to get a bounce off of an object that's too high and too far by pressing my jump button earlier than usual instead of as late as possible. Obviously, I'm combining this with me jumping in the air first before letting go of my punch. Depending on the distance, it might be possible without jumping first, but we can always test that out, right? Because it just depends on the distance. Yeah, see? I don't even have to jump to be able to bounce off of this. I just have to press my jump button earlier than usual, which is like around here, and I'm able to bounce off of objects that are too high and too far. So this is actually a very useful trick when you're trying to bounce off of things that are obviously too far away from you and if the object's too high. Alright, so now I'm going to be showing you in drawing how this works. So this blue block is just flat land. This purple thing is an object that's high, and this red stick figure is Doomfist. This orange line is when Doom let goes of his punch, and then the white line after that is when Doom presses his jump button, which cancels his punch, and that's like the momentum part, right? So right now, there's a lot of distance between Doom and this object, and obviously this object is too high. So what we want to do to execute a bounce on this is we let go of Doom Punch, and then we press our jump button earlier than usual, because when we press our jump button as late as possible, this is what happens. You hit the wall, you don't go anywhere. So you press your jump button earlier than usual, and because when you press your jump button to cancel Doom's punch, you're actually jumping in the air. So therefore, you go up in the air, and you're able to hit the edge or slant of the object and get a small bounce off of it. That's just how it works. Now, depending on the height of the object, the distance between you and the object, and the height that you're on, so where Doomfist is, right? Because like Doom can be standing here instead of up here, right? And Doom can be standing up here instead of down there. Like, it just depends. You're gonna have to keep testing this out and figure it out on your own. But sometimes you might have to jump first, let go of your punch, and then press your jump button as early as you can. You don't want to press it too early, and you don't want to press it too late. You want to find that sweet spot. And when you find that sweet spot, you're able to get that bounce off of the object and go up in the air. That's just how it works. Now, that's basically your option when it comes to bouncing off of objects that are too high, that have a far distance between you two. And obviously, if you do want to maximize your bounce height off of objects, you want to press your jump button as late as possible. But in certain situations, depending on the distance and all that fun stuff, you're going to have to press your jump button early to get a bounce. And that bounce that you're going to be getting is not going to be the biggest bounce possible. It's not going to be possible at all. but you're still going to get a bounce to the point where you're able to get that little blue indicator slam, which is usually what you want to go for when you try to bounce off of things, or if you want to go on high ground or anything like that. So hopefully you have an understanding on how to bounce off of objects that are too high, far distance between you and the object. You can even like be close to the object, but like the object is extra high, then you have to like do the trick where you like jump in the air, let go of your punch, press your jump button early to cancel your punch, and then you're able to get the bounce off the object. Now that's only if the object is super high, right? Like it really depends. So just go in the game, find some random spots, just practice on any edge or slant, and just try to do stuff like that. Like just try to bounce off of things that are too high and far and all that stuff. You just need to learn uh, the difference. Like it's just gonna be different every single time. It just depends on where you stand and all of that stuff. So it's different every single time. But that's just how this trick works. So hopefully you do understand how it works by now. You're just gonna have to test it out and figure out the rest on your own. Alright, so I showed you how to bounce off of objects that are too high, and now I'm going to be showing you how to bounce off of objects that are too low. These objects are kind of rare to find. I only know like two by heart. There's one in Hollywood and one right here. If we come to this thing right here, we can like literally walk over this, right? Like, it's just small, right? And if we stand on top of it and we shoot it, this thing does not affect the geometry of it, right? So basically, this is just a mini rectangle. If we're going on top of it, we can literally test this out that it is a mini rectangle, right? Yeah, like I'm testing it out right now. It's definitely a rectangle. So there is an edge to it, obviously. It is possible to bounce off of it, and the way we execute a bounce off of this object is we need to press our jump button as late as possible. Because if we press it right here, like if we press it just a little early, if we press it like right around here, we're gonna just jump over the object when we cancel our punch. But when you press your jump button as late as possible, you can actually bounce off of the object. So let me show you. So I'm gonna stand here and try to bounce off of this object. You see I jumped right over it. If I jump over it, I have to press my jump button later, like way later. So I pressed it early there. I got a very small bounce, but I need to press my jump button later. Again, I pressed it too early. There we go. I got a decent bounce, and that's it. That's all you do. It works on this side as well. You can see that even standing on this street and this street affects your height. You see that? It's very little, but you could definitely notice it and feel it. We can also bounce off it from this angle, so that one's a little more easier to do. But when it comes to objects that are very tiny, you just have to press your jump button as late as possible. It's pretty easy to do. I will show you in drawing how it works. Let's say this is an object that's too low, right? And this blue thing is just flat ground. When you charge Doom's punch and you're charging Doom's punch, right? You let go, and then you press your jump button to try to bounce off of it. Because when you jump, you obviously jump, right? Like you're gonna go over the object. So the way you bounce off of objects that are too small is you literally want to press it as late as possible. So if I'm charging my punch and I let go, if you press your jump button as late as possible, you're able to bounce off of objects that are too low. So that's like a little trick that you could do. You just want to press your jump button as late as possible, because if you press it just early, just like a little bit early, you're gonna jump over the object. That's what's gonna happen. So if you ever come across objects that are too low, you press your jump button as late as possible. Now you can also, if I remember when I showed you earlier when you can hold your jump key and tap your rocket punch to instantly cancel it. If you master the distance, so here let me show you. Let's start with the rocket first. If you master the distance, you can hold your jump key and tap your rocket punch to always get the perfect bounce if you just master the distance, right? It doesn't matter how hard you charge your punch, like it doesn't really matter. You could charge it just a little bit and time it right and you'll get a max bounce, right? It doesn't matter how much charge you have. So if I hold my jump key maybe like right here, I think this distance is pretty fair. Hopefully I'm not wrong. Maybe like right here. I'm gonna hold my jump key and tap my punch at the right time. And look at that, I got the perfect bounce off of it. Okay, so now you have an understanding on how to bounce off of edges, right? So now I'm going to be showing you how to bounce off of slanted objects or ramps or anything like that. And I like this spot right here because this part right here, like right in this beginning, it's slanted the most, and then when it kind of goes up here, like the roof of it, it kind of slants less. And that's when geometry comes into play, right? If something is slanted a lot more, so like right here, this is slanted the most, this beginning part. I'll show you in drawing what I mean a little later. The part that's slanted the most will get you the highest bounce possible if you time your jump properly and you got the right angles, right? And if you try to bounce off the top, you're not going to really get a good bounce because of the geometry. It doesn't matter if you time your jump properly or anything like that. It doesn't matter if you get the right angles. The geometry sucks. You're not going to get a good bounce. So I'm going to show you an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce off of the bottom part right here. Not this edge, but like this, the beginning of where it starts to ramp up, right? This right here. So I'm going to try to bounce off of this. And you can see I get a pretty good bounce. Let's do it again. Yeah, you can see I get a pretty good bounce, and now I'm gonna uppercut and try to bounce off of the top of this thing. As you can see, I don't really get a good bounce, and that's just because of the geometry, right? If something is slanted less, you're not gonna bounce as high. Obviously, geometry plays a big role. The timing of you pressing your jump button plays a big role. The angles play a big role. And what I mean by angles, like how I showed you earlier, when I was standing here looking directly at the slant, I was able to get a really good bounce, right? Now, I can look directly at the slant, and I'm not going to get a good bounce. That's because of the angle, right? You don't want to be looking at the object at this angle. You want to be pretty much directly in front of it. That's how you maximize your bounce. So if you're ever bouncing off of things, you just want to go ahead and test them over and over. Try different angles, try different timings, try different heights, right? You want to try all these different things to see how you can maximize the bounce of whatever you're trying to bounce off of. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into drawing, and I'm going to show you in drawing how bouncing off of slants work and how you maximize your height. Like I know I showed you through the game, but I just want to show you in drawing so you might get a better understanding. Okay, so I already showed you in the game how bouncing off the slants and stuff works, but I'm just going to show you quickly in drawing. So the bottom part of this roof is slanted the most. The middle is slanted, like it's decent, right? But the top is not, it's barely slanted, so you're not going to get a bounce as high. So our goal is to always bounce at the part that's slanted the most, which is the bottom part. So I'm going to check this here. So this bottom part right here is slanted the most. So if we were to jump in the air, right, we let go of our rocket punch, and then we press our jump button perfectly on this little sloped part, we're going to get the max bounce height possible because it's slanted the most. Okay. So now, let's say we decided to bounce off of this part, which is the middle, right? It's not slanted as much, but I mean, it's a pretty good slant, but it's just not slanted as much as the green part, right? So if we jumped in the air and we let go of our punch, and then we pressed our jump button, and we bounce off of this part, we're going to get a bounce, but we're just not going to go as high because it's just not slanted as much, right? So it's pretty easy to understand there. And now we get to the red part. So this red part is not slanted that much. So if we were to uppercut in the air and we drop down, right, and then we let go of our punch, and remember it takes us down just a little bit when we're letting go of our punch, and then we press our jump button to bounce off of this roof, we're not going to really get a bounce, right? It's going to be a very small bounce. And that's because the geometry, it's just not slanted that much. So the way the slant is, like if it's slanted more, right, if it has a steeper slant to it, you're going to get a higher bounce. It doesn't matter how you time the red part because the slant sucks. You're just not going to get a good bounce no matter what. It doesn't matter if you time it perfectly, you're not going to get a good bounce. And that's just because the slant, right? The steeper the slant is, the higher you'll go up in the air. That's just how it works. Alright, so now I taught you how to bounce off of a rock, I taught you how to bounce off of objects that are higher than you, and I taught you how to bounce off of slanted stuff. Now, I'm going to be teaching you what you can actually bounce off of. So, in short, you can bounce off of everything, right? Any object, like literally everything in the game. You can pretty much bounce off of everything. And I'm going to show you how to test that, how to find bad geometry, good geometry, like what you can bounce off of and all that stuff. So I'm gonna go with the easier one, right? So slants, right? And we can bounce off of anything that has a slant to it. So if we try to bounce off of this wall, it's gonna work because there's a slant to it. We can jump if we want to. It doesn't really matter. If one part is slanted more, so for example, let's say this bottom part is slanted the most and then the top part kind of flattens out, you don't want to jump first and then try to bounce off of it, right? You want to try to just bounce off of this part that's slanted the most, and that will maximize your bounce height. This is just going to be a really quick drawing to show you an example of the wall bouncing thing. So let's say, for example, for the bottom parts of the geometry is slanted more than the top part. If you were to bounce off of the bottom part, you're going to get a better bounce. That's just how it works. And you can see that this top part is kind of slanted. So if I were to jump with Doomfist, let go of my punch at the top of my jump, and bounce off of this slanted part, but you can see it's not that slanted, you're just going to get a little mini bounce. You're not really going to go as high. So that's just how it works. That's geometry things. If it's slanted more, you get a higher bounce. That's just how it works. Now, I'm going to show you how to test geometry when it comes to slanted stuff. So, if we come to this wall right here and we jump into the wall, we can clearly see that we kind of go up the wall and then we kind of drop down, right? Like you see there's like this little slant to it. Now, if I go to this wall, now this wall appears visually flat, and then if I run into it, yeah, it's obviously flat. My crosshair isn't going like this, right? It's not doing that. It's just going up and down. See, it's just going up and down. So that means we can't bounce off of this. Now, let's say this wall, the visuals of it was actually placed here, right? And visually, let's say this wall visually looks flat, but if we walk into it, and it's obviously not flat because the actual geometry isn't flat. It doesn't matter what the object looks like visually, it's about the actual geometry of it, and the way you test it is just by running your character into it, jumping around it, walking around it, and that's how you get a feel for what the geometry can be. So it is possible to bounce off of objects that look completely flat, but the actual geometry isn't flat, so it allows you to bounce off of it. So hopefully that explains the geometry part when it comes to slants. Now, you can also bounce off of anything that has an edge to it. So for example, this right here is an edge where my crosshair is, like exactly on that spot, so you can bounce off of that. See, I got to bounce off of it. Obviously this right here is an edge. Everything on these stairs is an edge, right? We can bounce off of that. Obviously this right here, it's too high, and I already taught you that you have to jump first before you let go of your punch, and we can get a bounce off of it. Now I got a small one because of the timing. You see, we got a good bounce, and that's because this thing has an edge. There's an edge here, there's an edge there, this whole stairs is an edge. Now these are breakables, right? We can break these, but we can stand on these, right? And if we're on top of, I don't know what you want to call these, but if we're on top of them, we can kind of test the geometry, right? It's like a square. It's not, I don't think it's a circle, I think it's a square. So maybe it's a circle, who knows? But there's obviously an edge to it, so we can easily get a bounce off of this, right? Anything that has an edge you can bounce off of. This right here, if we go ahead and test it out, it's obviously slanted, so that means we could bounce off of it. So let's try to bounce off of it. It might be a little too high, because like, I mean, I already know based on like visuals, this object is too high, so I need to jump first and then let go of my punch, and I need to time that better. See, we get a bounce off of it. Obviously there's an edge at the bottom of this window, so we can bounce off of that. You see, we can get bounces off of windows like that. Even right here too, right? There's like a whole edge, so if I time it right, you see, we get a bounce off of it. So literally everything that has an edge you can bounce off of. So even like right here, there's an edge right here, we can bounce off of this. You can bounce off of literally anything with an edge. Now here, I'm going to show you some weird geometry, right? So this spot right here, we could stand on it, right? This is something we can stand on. And then if we come to the top of this, you see that? I'm not standing on it, I'm kind of sliding off of it. So obviously, there is a slant to this, right? And you know what we could do with slants that we can't walk on? We can bounce off of them. So if I time it right, I could probably bounce off of this. Just like that. Very easy to understand, right? This right here too, this wall is not just flat, it's actually slanted, and we could test it a little bit. We can clearly see there's a slight slant to it, so that means we could get a bounce if I time it better. See, there we go, we got a bounce. There's an edge to this whole thing, we can bounce off of this. Obviously there's this whole thing's an edge, we could bounce off of it. Just like that. Now, that bounce is obviously bad, but in the next video I'm going to be teaching you turn punch bounces, which is like this. I don't want to get into this video, but we can do stuff like that with turn punch bounces, so I'll get into that in the next video. This whole thing is an edge, we can bounce off of this, right? I timed it bad, we just gotta time it better. There we go, we can bounce off of that. This whole thing's an edge, you can obviously bounce off of this. Like, you can literally bounce off of anything, right? I already explained this like 20 times already, but you can bounce off of literally anything that has an edge, a slant, it doesn't matter, right? You can bounce off of literally anything. Here's another example, like this right here, this is bad geometry, right? So if we go on top of this car right here, there's an edge to this, right? Like this right here, there's an edge, right? And then if we kind of go up the car, you can kind of see how bad this geometry is. Like, look how my character is reacting to me walking on this. See, it's really weird. This is really bad geometry, right? There's like a part that's slanted. I just stepped on it for like half a second, like it was slanted just a little bit. I'm trying to get into it again. Like, see, I'm going on parts that I can walk on, but I'm trying to get into the part that, yeah, you see that? I just kind of stepped on the slanted part. It's kind of hard to get into. But you can clearly see that this geometry just is really bad. So, what happens if I try to bounce off of the front windshield? Alright, I got a good bounce. I probably bounced off of the slanted part. Let's try it again. Maybe we can get it messed up. You see right there. That's just because of bad geometry. Again, right there. Bad geometry. Bad geometry. I'm getting a bounce, but my character runs into a spot that I can walk on, so therefore the bounce doesn't really go up in the air. So the way I would want to bounce off of this is by not bouncing at all, and I would get a bounce. And it would be a bounce that's high enough for me to slam into these windows, right? Just like that. So it's a good enough bounce. I don't need to go all the way up in the skybox. It's unnecessary unless I want to like bounce up there. But you can see like this geometry is just really bad, but I'm able to get a bounce up here. So if there's something you can't bounce off of, or you're not bouncing as high, just test it out. You want to test different heights. You want to jump, try it without jumping, try it at a different angle, try it like just try, like, you just want to try a bunch of different things, like how I taught you, right? Like the geometry plays a big role, the height of your character plays a big role, what else? The timing of your space button plays a big role. So you guys want to factor in all of those possibilities because you want to always test geometry. So I'm going to quickly explain in drawing how the geometry stuff works and why you're struggling to bounce off of the van. I know I'm just showing you like very specific spots, but I'm trying to explain it so you have an understanding on how like geometry stuff affects Doom's bouncing. So obviously if you want to bounce off of the van and not have problems, you want to bounce off of the edge. And if you're going to get problems, you're going to be, if you jump in the air, right, and you try to let go of your punch and you try to bounce off of like the windshield part, you're going to have problems, and I'll explain why. So the red part is spots that you can walk on. So if you were to stand on top of the car, you can obviously walk on it, right? And there's like two spots that you can walk on the van, and then there's like two spots that are spots that you can't walk on. So like even like this green part, like you can't walk on it, like you kind of just slide off of it. It's like a slant, right? It's like a roof, right? It's just really weird geometry. So basically, if I were to jump in the air and try to bounce off of the red part that I can walk on, I'm not going to really go anywhere because I'm bouncing off a spot that I can walk on, and I'm going to just hit the part that I can walk on, and I'm not going to get a bounce. But if I were to jump in the air, let go of my punch, and then bounce off of the green part, which is this part that you cannot walk on, you're going to have a problem. And that's because you're going to get the bounce, right? You're getting the bounce, and then your character touches the part that you can walk on, and then you don't get the bounce anymore. So, example, even up here, if I were to like jump in the air, let go of my punch, and then press my jump button, I'll get the bounce, right? I'll get a nice bounce, and then I'll touch the roof of the car, and I won't get a bounce anymore because my character puts his feet on the vehicle, and I can't go anywhere. So the easier way for this exact van is you just don't jump at all. You just let go of your punch normally and bounce off of the edge right here, and you get a good bounce. You're not going to touch the part that you can walk on. You're not going to touch the part that's the part that you can't walk on, and you're going to ignore this whole thing, and you're just going to go up in the air. Obviously, if you were to get a bounce off of these parts right here, which is difficult because you kind of want to get a bounce. So like if I were to jump in the air, right, you kind of want to bounce off of the bottom part instead of the top part, because if you try to bounce off the top part, you're obviously going to touch the red part, and the red part is the part that you can walk on. But if you were to bounce off of the bottom part, you get a way better bounce. Like the bounce is so much better, but you're running the risk of running into the red part, which is the part you walk on, and you're not going to get a bounce at all. So basically, you just want to bounce off of the edge when it comes to the vehicle. But I just want to explain how good and bad geometry affects the way Doom bounces off of things, so you can have a better understanding on how bouncing works with certain geometries. You can also punch off of enemy players. You can also bounce off of May's wall. You could bounce off of Diva's ultimate. I just want to show you guys some more bad geometry. So if we look at this object up here, we can see that it is slanted on top, right? Visually, we see it's slanted. and obviously there's an edge to it, which is the whole bottom part and right there. So you would think that if I were to bounce off of the slanted part, I would go up in the air, right? So let's see what happens when I try to bounce off of the slanted part. You see, it didn't work. And you want to know why? Because I can actually walk on this. This part right here, this is not something that's slippery, like up here. Like if we go up here, we can see how we're kind of just sliding off of it, right? But this is actually something we can walk on. So when we try to bounce off of the part that we can walk on, it doesn't really work. Now it is possible to actually bounce off of stairs like this. Like this is something I can walk on, right? It actually is possible to bounce off of it, but it's super hard to do. So I'm not gonna really include this in this video, but it's possible. But yeah, like that's the reason why it's not working. So the way we go around that is, instead of us trying to bounce off of the slanted part, we bounce off of the bottom edge, because we can actually get a bounce off of that. So let's see if I could time it right. You see that? I got a bounce. Let's try it again. I got a bounce. Now let's try to bounce off of the slanted part. It didn't work because I land on top of the part I can walk on, so therefore I don't get the bounce. So this is just an example of bad geometry. This is why you need to test things all the time. So because not everything's the same, right? Like this spot right here, for example, it's not the same as any other roof that looks like this. So make sure you guys test all your geometries and stuff. So yeah. Alright, so I'm going to show you a trick on how to bounce off of the same edge that you're standing on. Pretty easy to do. It should work on console, it just might be a little different. So what we want to do is we want to jump off of this edge, and we want to jump as late as possible, like pretty much right before we fall off, because we want to get as far away as possible from this edge, because it'll just make it easier for us. So what we want to do is we're going to jump off of the edge and then hold our jump button. So just like this, jump, hold our jump button, and then what we're going to do is we're going to 180, and then we're going to tap our punch button. And if we do it just right, we'll bounce off of the same edge that we're standing on, just like the way I just did right there. See, just like that. Now for console, you might have to like look to the side, because it's like I don't think you can really 180 that quick, so you might have to look to the side and walk like this and then do that, right? Another thing is I recommend you look down, because if you're looking straight, you can't see the edge of the platform, right? Like you can't even see it right now. So getting that jump button timed is going to be a little more difficult. So I would recommend you look at the floor so you can time your jump button, hold your jump button, and then tap your punch button. Very easy to do. All you have to do is master two things, and the part that you need to master is pressing your jump button as late as possible, and then the other thing you need to master is tapping your punch button at the right time after you jump. So that's it. Those are the two things you just need to master: the jump and then tapping your punch button at the right time. So now I'm going to show you some other uses for this bouncing trick of bouncing off the same edge. It works on literally any edge. Like this thing's an edge right here, so it'll work on this, obviously. I just have to time it better. So yeah, see, like I'm timing it really bad right now. See, I got to bounce. You can also do it off of this thing. Like let's say, I don't know, there's like a fair in the air. You can bounce off of that same edge. See, it's just all about timing. That's all it is. It's all about timing. See, I got to bounce. We can go for the Farah. Not only does it work on edges, it works on slants. So, I mean, yeah, see, really easy. Another example, this one's a little more weird because like, it's hard to explain, but like this part's slanted, obviously, and if we're standing on here and we jump off at the right time, we could get a bounce. I might have to angle my punch a little bit so I don't punch that, but yeah, see, we can get a bounce off of that. Another thing that you could do is, for example, if I come over here, right, and I want to bounce off of the same edge and I want to get over here, I don't have to look straight at the wall. I can look at the edge at an angle. Okay, so let me show you what happens when I look at it at an angle. You see that? I kind of get bounced to the side. Let's do it again. I messed up there. You see that? I get bounced to the side. So you don't always have to look directly at the object like this. You don't have to. If you want to angle your bounces, you just have to change the angle you are looking at the edge, or slant. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys another trick with bouncing and like controlling your movement in the air and why it's very helpful. So I'm going to be on King's Row. I'm going to show you this example right here. So if I were to bounce off of this thing right here, look at the issue that happens. Did you see that? Let's do it again. One more time. You see how my character is hitting this thing right here and it's stopping me from going up in the air? So the way we go around that is when we bounce off of something, we can walk backwards after we bounce off of something. So you could hold your backwards key or your side key while you're punching. So like right now, like see I'm holding my S key while I'm punching. And when you bounce off of it, you're gonna be moving backwards in the air, therefore you don't hit your head on this thing or your body or whatever, right? And then we can continue going up in the air. So let me show you. You see that? Now I'm going a lot higher with my bounce. You see that? I'm not hitting this thing anymore. Now let's walk forward. See? I hit it. Now we walk backwards. Now we don't hit it anymore. Now we can also do it to the side. See? We can also move our momentum to the side just like that. We can also walk backwards and move to the side. See? Just like that. So now what I want you to do is I want you to bounce off of this object. And I want you to land in this window by walking backwards and moving to the right. See? Just like that. Now, it's obviously going to be a challenge because what you need to do is you need to try to hit the best bounce height that you can get out of this. And you also need to land into the window. See? Just like that. Here's another challenge I want you to do. I want you to bounce off of this right here. Let's do it off of the second window, right? This middle one right here. Let's do it off of this one. You want to bounce off of this, and I want you to land in here. Very easy to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to just bounce off of it, and then hold our D key, or whatever movement button is for you to move to the right, and this is what happens. You see, we could do that. Let's do it again. Just like that. Very easy to do. Now, you could also hold your forward key and look to the right. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to bounce off of this, and then while in the air, I'm going to hold my forward key and look to the right. So this is all I'm doing in the air right now. Just this. Very easy to do, right? So, see? You see how we can control our momentum after we bounce off of something? You see that? So we can do stuff like that. You could basically control your movement in the air by moving your keys. So this is very useful when you're trying to control bounces or you're trying to like do stuff like that. So instead of I didn't mean to alter. Instead of like bouncing off of this and going like that, right? You can actually bounce off of it and like still continue to dish out damage or look at your surroundings after you bounce off of something and like still control your movement and be able to like land on a high ground or something like that. Alright, so now we are going to be getting into turn punch bouncing. Turn punch bouncing is very useful. If you're going to be bouncing a lot, I recommend you learn how to do turn punch bouncing. I think it's pretty easy to do. So what I would recommend first is you have an understanding on how bouncing works. So learn how to bounce off of edges, slants, learn how to control your movement in the air when you bounce off of something, like how I showed you earlier, before you even get to this point. So also, you want to learn how to do turn punches. I already have a guide on turn punches, so if you don't know how to do that, go ahead and look through the Doomfist for Dummies guide. Now we like get into turn punch bouncing. So I recommend this spot because this spot is amazing. I'm gonna put this in slow-mo, so it's a little more easier. So it's really easy to understand. What we want to do is we're going to bounce off of this, right? This is our goal. We're going to do a turn punch bounce off of this, but we're not going to be looking at the object right here, right? Like usually when we bounce off of something, we're looking directly at the object like this, and then we try to go for a bounce if I don't mess it up, just like that. But what if we're standing here and we want to bounce off of this object? You might be like, oh, that's impossible, but we can actually do a turn punch into a bounce. So all you want to do is just do a regular turn punch into this. So we're going to stand here, right? You don't have to be super perfect. And we're just going to do a turn punch to the right. So if you know how to do turn punches, then you already know what to do. You see that? I got a bounce. Now let's do it again, but we're going to do it to the left. So we're going to stand here, and we're going to do a turn punch into this thing. You see that? I got a bounce. even though I'm not looking directly at the object, I'm actually onto the side of it and I'm able to bounce off of it. You also don't have to be 90 degrees to the object you're trying to do a turn punch bounce off of. Like, for example, I could stand right here and I could bounce off of this normally, but it's going to be angled. You see that how I get a really small bounce and I kind of get bounced to the side? I can still do a turn punch bounce off of this and go up normally. Just like that. So you don't always have to be 90 degrees. Like, you don't always have to be like at this exact angle to get that bounce. You can always be at an angle like this. You can even do a turn punch bounce right in front of the object. Like, you don't even have to like be 90 degrees. Like, you could literally be in front of the object and do a turn punch bounce. Obviously, I'm just timing it really bad, but that's just an example right there. How I did a turn punch bounce off of that. See? Pretty easy to do. Now, I can also do it here. I can stand here, right? I can't even see the object anymore. I'm gonna punch right here, right? I'm gonna look to the right, and then I'm gonna press my jump button at the right time, and then I'll bounce off of this, which would be known as a turn punch bounce, because we're doing a turn punch and we're bouncing. You see that? I did a turn punch and I bounced off of it. That's a turn punch bounce. So I recommend you go to this map, Volskaya, and do turn punch bounces off of this. I don't know what you want to call this thing, but just keep doing turn punch bounces off of it. Try to land on these high grounds if possible. See, just like that. Now, what I like to do is obviously when I bounce off of stuff, I usually hold my forwards key the whole time to control my momentum in the air. So when I do a turn punch bounce off of this, I don't want to continue holding forward, because look where I end up. I go nowhere. I want to be able to control my movement in the air, so when I do a turn punch bounce off of something, I quickly look away and go towards where I want to go originally. So I want to come up on this high ground, so I move my mouse and look at the high ground, and that's where I want to go. So we're going to do it again. We're holding our forwards key this whole time. You see that? We did a turn punch bounce, and then we looked at the direction where we want to go while holding our forwards key. So, pretty easy to understand. I really recommend you go on this map and continuously practice this spot until you have an understanding of turn punch bounces, because you could also do stuff like this, right? Try to do that as well. Try to enter up onto this bridge. Try it on the other side as well. Make sure you're practicing left and right turn punch bounces, right? Like, try to do this. Like, see, I'm trying to get in there, I messed up. I need to bounce a little higher, so I need to press my jump button a little later. Not later, but like, I need to like get that good distance, because if I'm like this far away from it and I try to do a bounce off of it, I'm not gonna really go as high. So let me show you. If I'm standing here and I do a turn punch right here, you see I don't really go as high, but if I'm closer to the object and do a turn punch, I'll go a little higher. See, I'm going a little more higher. So it's basically the same thing. It's like you're pressing your jump button here and you're getting a better bounce than you trying to press it here. See? Now, yeah, just practice this spot. Try to land on this bridge constantly. This bridge, try to land through here, right? You want to be able to have a good control over your character when you bounce off of things. You want to be able to do stuff like this when you're bouncing. You don't only have to hold your forwards key. Like I said, you can hold your side keys, or your strafe keys. So we could do stuff like this. Like, I'm holding my A and S key. You see that? I'm not even looking at this bridge, and I'm controlling my momentum in the air. So you should be able to do stuff like that. I don't know how you could do it on controller. It might be a little more difficult, but I mean, you just have to practice. So you could do stuff like this. Very useful. You could still look at your surroundings while you're bouncing off of things. Get some more damage in or whatever, you know, stuff like that. I'm not gonna make it. I didn't go high enough. But yeah, this is turn punch bouncing. Very easy to understand. See, just like that. You want to be able to have full control over your character when you're bouncing off of things, and I think this map is very great for that, because you can get a very good turn punch bounce off of this, and you can land on this thing, and you can also go on this bridge on both sides. So make sure you're practicing left turn punch bounces and right turn punch bounces, and just have a good feeling and understanding on how to control your character in the air. And here's another thing I want you to practice. If you come to this side and you bounce off of this, just hold your backwards key and try to go over this bridge. See? Just like that. Just practice that, just so you can have a better feeling of the movement. You can also try holding your backwards and your side keys, just like that. You see how I entered through here? I entered through the middle. Now let's try to enter through this side. See, just like that. You want to practice this. Now, I'm going to show you. Now, this might not work on console because you have to move really quickly with this. So, if you do a bounce off of this and quickly do a 180 and hold your forwards key, like I'm talking about, like literally the second you bounce off of it, let me show you what happens. So, if I were to do it normally, like in regular speed, right? So, if I just did a bounce off of this and then move to, like, do a 180 and hold my forwards key, look what happens. You see that? You see how smooth that kind of circles like around this thing? Now if I do it very quickly, like I'm talking about, like I bounce off of it and I quickly 180 and hold my forwards key, look what happens. You see that? It's almost like I'm holding my S key to go backwards, right? It's almost like I'm doing that, but I'm not. You see that? Try to do that as well. Do it on the left and right side. You see how I'm like pretty much doing a quick 180? Now I'm gonna see if I can do this in slow-mo. Maybe it'll help a little bit.
Hey there.
Just like that. Alright, so now I'm gonna show you why turn punch bouncing can come into play on many things. So here's one example. This thing right here, this thing has terrible geometry. Look what happens when you walk into it, right? Like this thing is slanted. We can see it's slanted, and if we walk on it, we can actually walk on it. It's not something that's like making me slide off. I can also stand on the top of it, right? The geometry is terrible. So if I were to try to bounce off of this, it's not really gonna happen. It's gonna be, if it does happen, it's gonna be really difficult to get it consistently, right? The geometry is just terrible. But if I were to stand here, right, this whole thing is an edge, so that means I can get a bounce off of it. See, I'm getting a bounce off of it. So what I could do is I can do a turn punch bounce into this. So basically what I'm going to do, instead of me looking at this object and trying to bounce off of it, I'm going to look off to the side, right? And then I'm going to do a turn punch, right? Just a regular turn punch, and then just do a bounce off of it. So let's go ahead and do this right here. You see that? I got a turn punch bounce off of this, even though I wasn't able to bounce off of it. That's because I'm not bouncing off of this part. I'm actually putting myself right here, and I'm basically looking at the object and bouncing off of it. That's all I'm doing when it comes to turn punch bouncing. So I recommend you practice this turn punch bounce spot, because this one is really good. I find this very useful. Lets you take high ground, and also it gives you a good understanding on how to do turn punch bounces off of objects that you can't normally bounce off of because of the terrible geometry. So see, I'm able to get this very consistently because I just know how to do turn punch bounces. So you can literally do stuff like that. So if you're doing turn punch bounces off of this, I want you to be able to at least have an indicator slam, which is this blue indicator. I want you to at least be able to do a blue indicator slam onto points by doing a turn punch bounce off of this, because you can get a low bounce to the point where you could just land on top of this thing, right? Like just like that, you can just get on top of this thing. But if you want to perfect it and maximize your height, which I already explained in the beginning of the video on how to like maximize your height and all that stuff, you want to at least be able to get a blue indicator onto this point. Just like that. Very easy to do. So yeah, that's the end of the guide. Now I'm going to just freestyle in Hollywood, bounce off of random objects, edges, slants, and all that stuff, and learn from them and show you how you could just literally bounce off of anything in the game. So yeah, let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so obviously there's an edge right here, right? I can just walk on this. Seems like a good edge. Let me try to bounce off of it. Okay, I'm getting bounced to the side. It might be weird geometry, but I guess it worked out. Obviously, this should be an edge right up here. This seems a little too high, so I might have to jump first before letting go of my punch. Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah. Let's see what this is. I don't know if I can walk on this. Yeah, I can. Okay, so I can walk on top of this. Now, let's see if I can walk on this weird side thing. Okay, yeah, I can't walk on this side thing. And you can see how it's kind of slanted. So you already know if it's slanted, we can bounce off of it. I don't know if I have enough distance here. I might have to do like a mini turn punch. So I'm going to go ahead and look this way and do a turn punch into this. Yeah, see, I get a bounce just fine. There's obviously an edge right here. Let's try to bounce off of it. Works fine. Let's see what... Yeah, there's obviously, like, I can stand on this, right? So you already know there's edges, there's an edge there. I should be able to get a bounce off of it It might angle me a little bit because of this thing, but we'll see. Okay, so yeah, it is pushing me off to the side a little bit. I might have to jump first before I try to bounce off of it. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. We got to bounce now. Let's try it again. I guess it's easier on that side because I have a little more room, but let me see. Let me keep practicing on this side. Let's try to do a turn punch into it. Well, I'm getting high enough to be able to get like an indicator slam. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I guess I have to do a turn punch bounce off of it. This one's a little more complicated. It'll take a little more practice to have a better understanding on how to interact with this from this side. This side is very easy. Like, I'm just able to get a decent bounce off of it, and now I can't do it, but okay, this is obviously a breakable. I already know this, so obviously we can stand on it, so we should be able to get a bounce off of it. Yeah, see, we're getting a bounce off of it just fine. Breakable. This obviously has to be an edge. We should be able to get a bounce off of it pretty easily. This whole thing is an edge, so we should be able to get a bounce off of the same edge that we're standing on. So I'm trying to see how I want to interact with this. I could probably jump off of it and try to do a bounce off of the bottom edge. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. It's enough for me to get an indicator. Let's see. There's this little camera right here. Yeah, this camera is a little too high. Okay, I could stand on this thing, which is weird. Like I said, this is just like bad geometry. Like, imagine if this is okay. I can't stand on like the bottom edge, but I can stand on like the middle of it. Like I can't stand on the bottom part, but I can stand like almost in the middle or top of it. So I'm going to assume I can maybe get a bounce off of the bottom edge. So I'm going to go ahead and try it. I'm going to try this without jumping first, because I know this seems a little high, but I just want to try it out. Okay, so that might be a little too high. I might try to press my jump button a little earlier, so I'm going to try to do it like right here. Maybe I'll get a jump and like hit that little slant and go up in the air. So let's go ahead and test that out. We're getting a little bounce to the side. Yeah, so what I might have to do is jump in the air and then let go of my punch. Yeah, there we go. Shoot again. Now let's try getting it from the top. Yeah, you see that? You saw what just happened? Because I can stand on top of this thing, I don't really get a bounce because, like I explained earlier in the video. Let's see. Obviously, this is an edge. We should be able to get a bounce off of this if I don't time it poorly. Let's see what this is. Okay, we can stand on top of this. I don't know if it's the same thing. Yeah, this thing is slanted a little bit. It's a different size to the other ones. So I should be able to get a bounce of the front of this light. Yeah, see, I can get a bounce there. This whole thing is an edge. There's not too much distance here for me to be able to cancel my punch. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a turn punch and just bounce off of it. Yeah, see, that works fine. I'm going to do stuff like that. Another light right here. Let me do a quick test. Yep, slanted, obviously. Should be able to get a bounce off of it. Yep, works fine. This thing. So I can't stand on top of it. It's like slippery. This is a balance spot, by the way. It's slippery, but there should be an edge to it, so I should be able to get a bounce off of it. The height looks fine. Yeah, see, I'm getting a bounce off of it just fine. This thing is slanted, but let's test it out. It's not something that we can't stand on. Yeah, this is something we can't stand on. So it's a slant, and we should be able to get a bounce off of it if we hit it right. So what I'm gonna do, because this height is a little weird, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a little test. I'm gonna try to press my jump button as late as possible, so maybe like around here, and see what happens. Okay, we do get a decent bounce, because I was thinking this might be a little too high, so I might have to press my jump button a little earlier than usual. It should still work just fine though. And then I was also thinking I might have to jump first and then let go of my punch. But yeah, that works just fine. Obviously, this thing is a slant. We should be able to get a bounce off of it. Yeah, we're getting a bounce off of it. Let's see. This thing right here, this, like where my green crosshair is, that's an edge, so I should be able to get a bounce off of it. This is obviously in quite a weird angle, so I might have to do like a turn punch. I might have to jump first and try to do a turn punch bounce off of this, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, so I'm able to do that. Let's try it again. Now, what I want to be able to at least get on top of this bridge by bouncing off this, so I'm going to just keep trying different things. I'm going to try it with jumping, without jumping, try different angles. Maybe I should stand here and do it. Might be a little easier. Let's just keep practicing. I mean, I think it might just be better to try to bounce off of this, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, that seems a little easier. Let's see, what is this? Oh, this camera thing that's sticking out. Let's see what this... Okay, yeah, you see this? This camera is fake. Like, I could shoot through it, I can walk through it. This is not real. It's completely fake. So, like, I would think, like, oh, I could probably bounce off of the camera, right? But, like, you can't, because you go right through it. So, fake camera. Let's see. Okay, there's obviously an edge to this, but it might be a little low, but I don't think so. Let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, there we go. We got to bounce off of it. Obviously this has an edge to it, so I should be able to get a bounce off of it. I might have to jump first. Yeah, see if we can get a bounce off of it. We already bounced off of the other one back there, but I'm assuming that they're all copy and pasted here, so I should be able to get a bounce off of this. Yep, that works fine. Once again, these boxes, they have an edge to it. I can get a bounce off of it. Probably this one too. Yep, works fine. Let's see. This one might be a little too high. Okay, so this one is a high object, so okay, you see I'm jumping at the peak of my jump, and then I'm pressing my jump button as late as possible, and you see I didn't get a bounce. Let's do it again. You see that? I'm not getting a bounce. So what I'm doing is I'm actually pressing my jump button, like I jump in the air, right? I let go of my punch in the middle of the air, and I press my jump button early. That way I can hit the edge of this. So watch. You see that? I got a bounce, and it's actually enough for me to be able to indicate or slam up here. Oh, I messed up there, but you see what I mean? How this is like a super high object, but I'm still able to bounce off of it because I'm pressing my jump button early. So the second jump button, right? I'm pressing it early because when you cancel your punch, you actually jump in the air, as you can see. So I already showed how this works, but I just want to show you guys again so you have a better understanding. I'm going to be showing it in drawing. So this pink line is Doom jumping in the air. This blue line is Doom punching in the air, and then the white line is Doom canceling his punch, which is like the extra momentum you get from pressing your jump button as you're punching. Okay, so obviously when Doom punches, right, so we jump in the air, Doom punches. Because Doom's punch doesn't go straight, you actually slowly fall down. When you press your jump button as late as possible, you end up hitting this object, you hit the wall, and you don't get a bounce at all. So the way we fix this is we jump in the air, we let go of our punch, and then instead of us pressing our jump button right here, we actually press it earlier than usual. And because we're pressing a jump button to cancel our punch, we're actually jumping in the air, and we get this little extra momentum that pushes us forward and also vertically up into the air, and it's enough to hit the edge of the object and get a small bounce off of it. And this bounce is enough to be able to get that blue indicator slam, which is usually what you go for. Now this is probably one of the highest objects I've seen that I was actually able to bounce off of, so I would highly recommend you actually practice this exact object to bounce off of. This is a really good object. So go ahead and practice that. This is just how it works. Hopefully you understand that by now. Let's see, what is this? I don't know if this light is real. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I think it might be real. So I'm going to assume I could probably bounce off the top of this. It's a little weird though. Oh, there we go. Yep, we got enough bounce to get up there. Okay, let's see this right here. Obviously this seems too high. I might have to jump first and then let go of my punch. I mean, press my second jump button early to be able to get to this edge. So I'm gonna go ahead and test that out. Yeah, there we go. We're getting a bounce. We're not going high enough because we're doing that second jump early because this is just way too high. Same thing with that box. Maybe we can get up here. I don't know. It might be possible. I mean, very close. What is this right here? Yeah, I was thinking maybe I could bounce off of this, but like it's not something I could stand on. Like you could clearly see that this actual geometry is just completely flat. It's not like this isn't actually sticking out, so we can ignore that. Oh, this whole thing is an edge, right? This whole stairs, so we could get a bounce off of that pretty easily. This thing is just round and weird, so we might have to just practice it. So I'm bouncing off of this thing. Yeah, this is the part I can't stand on. This big circle right here. So I'm just testing the geometry right now. So obviously like the bottom sides, like all this whole thing, it seems like I cannot stand on it. You see how my character kind of just slides off when I barely push myself into it? Yeah, so it looks like this whole bottom thing is just the mini slant. So I should be able to get a bounce off of it in every angle without jumping. So yeah, I got a small bounce there, got a bounce there. It's really hard for me to do a bounce from here to here, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look over here and do a turn punch into that. Yeah, see, we're getting a bounce off of it. Let's try it again. Yeah, so this geometry is decent. What is this? See, like this thing looks slanted, but it's just, I don't know. I don't think that this geometry is really slanted. Oh yeah, I can stand on top of it. That's interesting. Okay. Let me see. Okay, this is weird. Yeah, you see, this geometry is just awful. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see if we can bounce off of it. Okay, we're not really getting a bounce. I'm gonna try to jump in the air and then try to bounce off of it. Okay, we're getting a very small bounce. Now what I'm thinking is, because there's an edge up here, and I know I can stand on top of this thing, I should be able to get a bounce off of this edge up here. So I'm gonna try that. This might be a little difficult. I might have to jump off of this thing. Yeah, there we go. We got a bounce off of it. See, like you can literally just look at anything that has an edge, whatever slant, you bounce off of it. This thing, an edge, we could probably bounce off of it. Yep, it works fine. This obviously has an edge. We can bounce off of it, but like we're not gonna really go anywhere. There's obviously an edge to this, so we should be able to get a bounce. Maybe we can get high enough to go up there. This object is a little too small, so it's kind of hard to bounce off of it. Like, to get like a really good height out of it. Okay, so, I mean, we know we can bounce off of it. Let's get a like, small bounce. Obviously, just like the same thing, we can probably bounce off of it. Yeah, we can bounce off it just fine. Look, it's another one of these slanted things that's fake slanted. Yeah, this still looks fake slanted, but I'm gonna try it out anyways. Yeah, we're getting a very small bounce. Yeah, this slant is super fake. Okay, obviously we can stand on this. There's an edge to it, and even if we couldn't stand on it, depending on the geometry, it could have been slanted, or it could have just been a completely flat wall the whole time. So I'm pretty sure I should be able to get a bounce off of this thing right here. So I'm gonna try that out. Yeah, see, we're able to get a bounce pretty easy. Let's see. This whole thing's an edge. It seems like it's a little too high, so I might have to jump first. And because I'm looking at it at a weird angle, if I'm standing like in this corner, right? I'm looking at this at a weird angle, so I'm gonna just bounce off of it normally, right? You see how we go that direction? Now, if I did a turn punch, so if I were to punch at it and then, oop, I didn't mean to do that. If I were to punch at it, right, I'm like letting go of my punch and I'm looking at this direction, and then I press my jump button, I should be able to bounce off of it as if I were standing here and bouncing off of it, right? Should be the same result. So let's go ahead and test that out. Yeah, you see that? Same result. Me doing a turn punch here and doing that and not hitting my head up there. Yeah, I keep hitting my head now. Yeah, me doing that is basically me standing here and just bouncing off of it like this. It's the exact same thing, but we're just standing over here and we're doing a turn punch. And if we don't do a turn punch, if we just punch at it straight, you can see we get pushed to the side, and it's going to be really hard for us to get up onto this high ground. You see that? So we need to do a turn punch. Well, anyways, you get the point. That's just like testing stuff. Let's see. Now I already know about this geometry right here, but I just want to show you. Like this whole van, like you would assume that maybe it's completely flat, but let me try to test this blue thing. Yeah, this blue thing actually sticks out, so I'm going to assume that because there's an edge to it and possibly a slant, I should be able to get a bounce off of it. Okay, so we got a very small bounce. Yeah, this is a very small bounce. So what I might have to do is I might have to do a turn punch bounce because I'm looking at this at an angle, right? I'm not standing over here and trying to bounce off it because I'm pretty sure if I were to stand here and try to bounce off of this, I would get a high enough bounce to be able to go up here. Yeah, see? That makes so much sense. So, that means if I'm standing here and I want to get a high enough bounce to go up there, I'm going to have to do a turn punch bounce. You see that? Okay, that's just really unlucky, but, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going high enough to be able to slam up here. Now, what I did there, like I bounced off of this, right? I did a turn punch bounce off of it, but instead of me holding forwards, I decided to go backwards because if I was holding forwards, I'm actually close to touching the top of this vehicle, and being close to the ground is enough for your character to do a arc slam, which is just this slam right here, this regular slam without this blue indicator. So what I'm doing is when I bounce off of this, I'm going backwards. That way I'm far enough away from the ground to be able to get this blue indicator. That way I can slam up here and not get that slam that you saw me get earlier. So I'm not like going up here and trying to do this, right? You see how that happens? What I want to do is I want to move backwards because I don't want to be on top of this van. I want to be like off of this floor. Like the further I'm away from the ground, I'll get like an indicator slam, right? That's just how the indicator slam works. So that is why I got that arc slam. So I want to make sure when I bounce off of this thing, I don't want to be over this object. So I don't want to be holding my forwards key like this because I'm going to get an arc slam if I'm setting up or if I'm really close to this vehicle. So you want to keep stuff like that in mind. Obviously there's an edge to this. Yeah, this is obviously too high, so I'm going to have to jump first and then let go of my punch, and I should be able to get a bounce. Yeah, see, I can get a bounce. I could probably do, like, I just found a rollout just like that. Look, I can get up here, right? So I could do this and like do that. Boom, a rollout right there. That's like on the spot rollout. Just like looking at things. So obviously this whole thing's an edge. I could do the same thing. I could probably get up in that corner now that I'm thinking about it. I could probably try it again. Yeah, see, we could do that now. Now we could do another rollout. Like, see, I'm just doing these rollouts, like, on the spot. Like, I could just look at things and know exactly what I could do. Obviously, this thing looks, almost copy and pasted, so I would assume I can bounce off of the same thing. Yeah, see, same thing. Just fine. Trying to see what else. Okay, so, yeah, we can walk on this. What about this thing? Okay, yeah, you see? This is, oh, wait. Yeah, this bottom part is slanted. Okay. Okay, so it seems like this bottom part is slanted and then the top part we can walk on. So I would assume I can probably bounce off of the edge and the slanted part, but it's a little difficult because there's not too much room. So I might have to do a turn punch to get into this little bottom slant. This one's gonna be a little difficult. There we go. So yeah, just like that. Let's see what this camera is all about. It's probably solid, I'm assuming. Let's go ahead and stand on top of it. Yeah, this is a solid camera. I'm pretty sure I could just bounce off of it. Yeah, it's just fine. So there's most likely an edge to it somewhere. There might be a slant to it somewhere. Let's see what this is right here. This stairs right here. Yep, I can bounce off of it. Just fine. What about this thing? Okay, there's like a little slant to it. You see how my character, you see my crosshair? Yeah, there's like a very slight slant to it. I would assume I could probably bounce off of it. Let me try jumping first. Okay, so I'm actually bouncing off of the edge. Yeah, so I'm actually bouncing off of the edge. So I'm gonna assume I can stand on this maybe. Yeah, so I can stand on this. So I'm bouncing off of this edge instead of right here. So okay, let's try this side. Yeah, I guess, yeah, bouncing off of the setting. It's too high, so I have to jump first, and then I'm able to get a bounce. I mean, that's just how it works. Like, okay, yeah, like here, like another edge right here. I can probably bounce off of it. Easy. So, I mean, that's just how bouncing stuff works. That's how I kind of see things when I'm trying to bounce off of something. Like, if I see a, I don't know, like an example, if I see an enemy up here, like there's just an enemy chilling up here, like I don't know who you want to call them, like soldier or whatever, they're up here, right? They're just chilling. and I want to get up here without using my uppercut. I want to do like a cool meme rollout. I look at everything around me, and I'm like, okay, there's an edge here, there's an edge here. This edge is too high, I might have to jump first. There's this whole thing's an edge, this whole thing is an edge. This green lock thing is an edge, right? I just look at everything around me. This light thing over there, there's a slant to it, so, I mean, I might have to, like, hit at it at an angle, you know, stuff like that. So, like, I just look at all the things around me, and I'm able to execute whatever tech would do. So, because we're talking about bounces in this video, I just like look at any edge, any object, any geometry, and know exactly what I could do with it, which method I'm supposed to use. Like, obviously, if something's too high, I know I have to jump first. If it's very high, I have to press my second jump button earlier than usual instead of as late as possible, because I'm gonna hit the wall if I press it as late as possible because it's too high. If it's low, I might have to press my jump button as late as possible, right? Because when you jump, here, this is a good example. Like when you jump, right? When you cancel your punch, you actually jump. So if I press my jump button as late as possible, I'm able to bounce off of small objects than if I were to press it early. You see that? I'm just jumping over the object, so I need to press my jump button as late as possible. So like stuff like that is in my mind. So yeah, like I can literally just look at anything. Like I can tell you right now, if I'm standing here and there's somebody up here, I can bounce off of this green thing, right? Easy. I could definitely bounce off of this. This one's a little too high, so I have to jump first, right? I could do that. I know I could bounce off of this whole edge. I could do stuff like this. I could definitely bounce off of this thingy, whatever that is, right? Now, same thing here. Now, if I'm standing here and I want to bounce off of this and get up here, now I can already spot an issue, and that would be I might hit my head here. Let's test it out. Okay, I didn't hit my head there. It might be because of the angle I'm punching it at. But what I would do is I would do a turn punch, bounce off of this. That way I wouldn't risk my head getting hit over there. You see that? I'm doing a turn punch bounce off of it. So it's like stuff like that, like here, like this light thing here, I could do that. Like I can literally just look at anything in this game and know I can bounce off of it. Like, so let me test this thing. I think I tested this before, did I? Yes, okay, this is fake. Cause I was like, maybe I could bounce off of this edge too, but it's not a real edge. It's fake. This little object thing, like it's completely flat. So that's just an example. Literally bounce off of any edge, any slant. You don't have to memorize bounce spots. People always be like, oh, I only know like 3 bounce spots. How do you memorize all these spots? I don't memorize them, right? I only memorize them if they're like really cool or like really hard to tell, because like let's say this obviously doesn't look like this doesn't look slanted or like has an edge to it, but let's say the geometry is just terrible, then I could probably bounce off of it, right? Like I wouldn't know unless I tested it out, but you get what I mean. So yeah, I can literally look at anything in this game and know exactly how to execute the bounce to gain the maximum height to be able to get from point A to point B, right? That's just what I could do. So I just do basically rollouts on the spot. I could bounce off of things on the spot. I just look at things all around me and know what I could do with them. And that's how you should see Doom bounces as. Like, you shouldn't be memorizing bounce spots. You should have a full understanding on how the bounce tech works. That way you can look at anything and know exactly what you could do and to bounce off of it to gain the maximum height possible. Obviously, it's going to take practice and it's going to take a lot of learning and stuff like that, but yeah, hopefully this video helps out a lot. This is a really long video, but I wanted to get all the knowledge I know about bouncing and explain it, because I already made bounce guides before, but I don't think I explained everything that I know and all the little tricks that I know. So hopefully this all helps out.